Today we return to the Texas killing fields for the final part of our series. The fields are a 25-acre stretch of land where 29 bodies were discovered over a span of 35 years. Today we're focusing on the third serial killer of the fields that we have discussed, William Reece. Brace yourselves, guys, this is a rough one. Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by our Table of Disappointment. This is How They Got Away, the show where we discuss the unsatisfying endings to your favorite unsolved or unpunished true crime and corporate greed stories. I'm your host for today, Annalise. I am joined by my co host.
Hi, it's Kelsey. I've been here for the first three parts. This is the only time she's given any sort of content warning at the top of the episode. I am frightened.
And we're here with our guest who's making a very surprised expression.
Sorry, no, hi everyone, it's me, Anna again. I think it's really funny that Kelsey's like, guys, you know what I just realized? This is the only time she's given a content warning, and I'm like, Scoob.
I probably should have the other time as well.
I'm not ready.
I think she's done little ones where like a particular
ones, yeah.
section is difficult, but none at the very start. So, and I was here for those three, so I know that they were rough. So I'm quite frightened for what's
Yeah, this whole thing is rough and it never stops being rough. And it never stops coming and it doesn't stop coming.
And it doesn't
I
stop
am
coming.
very uncomfortable with the energy we've created in the studio today.
We're trying to start off the new year right. Maybe not right is the best word, but you know what I mean.
Annalise has also promised this is the last of the Texas killing field parts.
Unlike last time where I lied.
Okay.
Little liar Annalise.
You promise, Annalise.
Okay, this has to be the last part because I don't have a good place to split this anyway.
Okay, fair. You are so brave.
Okay. So unless something happens in the next, 2 months, we're good.
I mean, 29 bodies in 35 years, right?
We're not going to do knock on wood.
For real. For real.
Okay. So as I mentioned, we're going to be discussing William Reece, but there are other victims kind of interspersed in this timeline. So we're going to discuss a few that don't relate to him first. So with that being said, let's talk about Lynette Bibbs and Tamara Fisher. Lynette Bibbs and Tamara Fisher were the 22nd and 23rd victims found in the killing fields. The two were 14 and 15, respectively, and had been out at a nightclub in Houston on February 1st, 1996. We're in the 90s, guys.
Oh boy.
Houston, never been. I hear it does have a pretty strong nightlife, though.
Yeah.
I always think of just the Beyonce, Houston, Texas, baby. That was wrong because I don't want to get any kind of copyright ever. Anyway.
That's so fair.
The girls were allegedly given a ride by a 22-year-old man who dropped them off at a hotel near the center of Houston, as stated by the driver himself. The girls' bodies were then found in Cleveland, Texas, on a rural road 2 days later. So I couldn't find specifics about this case from a reputable mainstream source. I did see a post by Black Kids Haven on Facebook, and they do a couple of Facebook posts related to kind of as it describes Black children who have gone missing or have been killed. So this post described the state that the bodies were in. They state the facts as Lynette being shot first with a gunshot to the face, and then Tamara being killed second with a gun to the back. Gunshot to the back, I should say. There were no signs of rape. However, Lynette was partially nude. Investigators believed that there had been two perpetrators, and the wiki states this as well. It really, from the way that is described, it sounds like they were attempting to do something. Lynette was fighting back. They got frustrated, shot her, and in that commotion, Tamara tried to run and was shot.
Yeah, that shot in the back is not really it's not like an obvious place you would choose to shoot someone. So that definitely seems like shot as running away. And the face even as well, that could be like an intentional like obliterate the face, I obliterate the person kind of thing,
Yeah.
or it could be like a struggle.
Yeah. There, to me, it reads as a struggle. And I know they kind of say that there may have been two perpetrators, but the way that that is, the way that I'm imagining this happening seems very much like one person was trying to keep them both under control and tried to do something and was unsuccessful.
I
Mm-hmm.
would agree with that. It definitely reads as like one or multiple, because there's still a chance it was multiple
True.
people trying to control two people, and two people even on a one-to-one is difficult. And but if it was only one perpetrator, that could explain why Lynette fought and then Tamara took the opportunity to run.
Which honestly, good for her.
Yeah, get out of there if
Yeah,
you can.
that's scary.
I want to hear about this driver though, because he says he left them off at the hotel, and I don't know that that's true.
There is very little details on this, unfortunately. I do want to say something that's really sad on top of this.
Hmm.
So Lynette's mother had actually been murdered when she was 4, and her case was never solved. So as a result,
Oh.
this family has 2 unsolved murders.
Oh my god. And more that's not incredibly common, but that's more commonly the case for people of color, correct? That their
Mm.
homicides go unsolved.
I do think that that is a factor here.
Having one is already like bad enough, but for me at least, in this context, I'm like, this is the first time I'm hearing about a family having more than one unsolved case, and I'm like, ugh, that's
And I feel
crunchy.
that that also, if you think about it, that happened when she was 4 years old. She grew up underneath that shadow of what happened to her mother. So I imagine Lynette is not the kind of person who would like she's living her life for sure, but with that knowledge of what happened to your mother, I don't think you would really live a very risky lifestyle. Like you wouldn't put yourself in a risky situation that you thought was dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and she was with her friend, so she probably felt, somewhat safer with her friend. But that's interesting to me about how someone got her into where whatever had happened, she clearly thought she was safe or safe-ish.
I gotta imagine, I mean, this was literally a decade after her mother. So I gotta imagine that her family was kind of, I don't want to say lost hope, because I don't want to say like they ever lose hope, but I feel like you sit with that for a decade. It feels a little different. And you kind of like got to this point where you're like, okay, like we're still trying to get recognition for this. We're still trying to hold out hope. We're trying to do all this stuff that someone will be caught. But it's been a decade. So you're like, okay. And then it happens again. Like, oh my God.
Does it say who's left in her family, or at least like direct family, or anyone she's super close with in
I
this
don't
time,
really
or
have
is
a
it
lot
just
of
like,
details on.
which is
Yeah, I don't
fair?
really have a lot of details on this case. So I honestly don't know who's left in her family. I don't know the situation,
Hmm.
which is
It's
really
like,
unfortunate. And again, I think speaks to
mm-hmm.
there are 2 girls of color.
Man.
So we're gonna shift again. Again, I told you that all of these are rough. But moving on. Crystal Baker, whose great aunt was apparently Marilyn Monroe, was
Get it?
13. It's a random fact and everyone mentions it. Which I mean,
I
like,
honestly, if I were related in any way to Marilyn Monroe, that would be the first thing out of my mouth every time I met a new person. Like, hi, I'm Kelsey. My great 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 aunt is Marilyn Monroe, or whatever.
I don't know why that
My
sounds like
first
a
cousin
vibe to me.
thrice removed.
anyway, Crystal was 13 when she went missing on March 5th, 1996. She was going to the convenience store there to use like the phone. She had like leaving her grandmother's house. She walked along I-45, a very familiar stretch to us now. She called her mother and her friends to like try to get a ride to somewhere else. But her mom was at work and her friends couldn't make that happen. So theoretically, no one came. She didn't go back to her grandmother's house. She would be found only 2 hours later. she had been raped, strangled to death, and then left under a bridge. And despite being found so quickly, her body was not linked to her for 2 weeks because the police insisted that she was a runaway.
So, hang on. They find a body. It's
Yep.
only been 2 hours. She's been strangled, so there's likely at least some swelling to the face, maybe, but it's only been 2 hours, and obviously, like, if no one on the force recognizes her, maybe they're not gonna put that together, but then somebody else is like, "Hey, my child is missing. This is a picture of her," and you don't go, 1 and 1 make 2. What?
I think we
What?
have heavily covered the incompetence of this particular area's police departments. I don't understand anything that goes
What
through
the
their
fuck was
brains.
that one about? Also, this is a little bit not specific to this case, but like in general, we've talked about several at this point of girls who went to the phone, like went to go to a payphone. Number one, is that like a common scoping area? Because that's like a private-ish area. It's what's going on with that. But also number two, smart now that we all have phones in our pockets, is that has that saved a lot of people who would otherwise be in these common hunting grounds sort of thing.
It is
And
scary.
thirdly,
It
because
is
I'm not
scary. It's
done.
like the common themes of this is payphones, hitchhiking, and girls around the age of 13.
Yuck.
And the other thing too is that she was found underneath a bridge not even a couple hours later. Clearly, whoever did this gave very little thought or care to like hiding the body, obscuring her identity, did not care about being caught. We have talked about the I-45. Is it 54 or 45? I can't.
45.
45. Many times, highway serial killers are kind of a known unknown, for lack of a better word. Clearly, this is a stop that people make. Like the lack of brazenness, I guess, is where I'm going to go with that. Like clearly did not care, knew they would get away with it. And all I could think is they like saw her at the payphone. She hung up, maybe starts to head back home, and then she just gets like dragged off the side of the road. Because it sounds like she was found relatively close to the payphone, like the
Yeah, I
bridge.
honestly don't know exactly how far it was from the payphone.
It couldn't have been very far because she was found only 2 hours later. So she like all of that
She
has
didn't
had to
travel.
have happened.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
back to Crystal. Her mother, Jeannie Escamilla or Escamilla, I'm not positive on how they pronounce it, said, quote, "They kept calling her a runaway, but she was too girly to be a runaway. She was beautiful on the inside and on the outside. She had that heart, but she was a teenager. She loved you one minute and hated you the next." End quote. Too girly.
She's so right for that. She's so right for that. But now that's like, I don't know. I think now I'm just like extra sad because you're like, oh, Crystal would have been what they call nowadays a girl's girl, and now I'm like, oh man,
I am imagining her in
oh
like, a
man,
little pink blouse, living it up, brace. This
Barbie
was like
girl
the 80s,
moment.
right? So like those
The
bracelets.
90s.
Oh, they're not so
This is
definitely like the
96.
bracelet. Oh god. The bracelets, a little like heart
Oh,
necklace. Yeah, that makes it worse. Also, 13 is not that old. I feel like with the internet and TikTok, we've aged up teens because like shows like Riverdale have like a bunch of 20-year-olds running around as 13-year-olds, and you're like, no, that's not how 13 is very much a child. You're like maybe just out of elementary school if it goes through K through 6. Like that's a
mm-hmm.
child.
That's just a
So
little guy.
the dress that Crystal had worn had been found to have a semen stain, which after 16 years was submitted for DNA analysis, which then led to Kevin Edison Smith being given a life sentence for her murder in 2012.
Okay, so we've talked about DNA several
Why did
times.
it
We've
take so
talked about
long?
databases that where you can submit DNA, like
Mm.
CODIS, the NCIC, I believe it is.
I'm
Those
literally about to
exist.
talk about that.
Oh, okay. I'll let you do your thing then, because I'll wait. I'll hold the rant.
Yeah. Well, we'll get that. So, Kevin Edison Smith, his DNA had been collected after he was charged in Louisiana in 2010 for another unrelated crime. During the time that he had killed Crystal, he was on probation for being charged for aggravated assault on a police officer.
Hmm.
What a great guy.
What a great dude. Shakes head, shakes head.
In an effort to clear more unsolved cases, a new law was created. The Crystal Jean Baker Act was passed and became effective on September 1st, 2019. And this law allowed DNA samples to be taken from people charged with certain felonies, which then allowed them to be compared with the Combined DNA Index System, aka CODIS.
Yep. So this is one of the cases that led to the founding of CODIS.
Or better utilization of it.
Yeah, that's right, because I was in my little rant, I was going to say CODIS is much older than that.
Yeah, I don't. Are we both looking at when it was established?
Yes. 1998.
Man.
Yeah.
In fairness, that was like the beginning, so like it wasn't. That was my thing, because we've talked about other cases in like the late 90s and early 2000s where CODIS was involved, or obviously in this case there's not much that can be done because his DNA had not actually been submitted to CODIS or the NCIC until 2012. But the fact that, or not 2012, 2010, but the fact that like they had the DNA and just like didn't submit it
Yeah.
is interesting. Like, did they think it was a one time? What was the reasoning? What was the reasoning? Because I'm not a law enforcement official by any stretch of the imagination, but the brazenness of dragging a little girl off the side of the road and under a bridge to rape and kill her and then just move on with your life, that screams to me, this is not my first rodeo, this is not my first crime. So I would be getting that DNA into a national database as soon as I could.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting.
And that's on how police work should be done. But I also do want to say that we understand that there is like a backlog of like a ton, and it does take time. But still,
It took 2
obviously,
years
because they
before
made
they
an
connected
act.
it to her.
Yeah. And because they made an act, it's obvious that something is happening. But yeah, I think there is some bandwidth to criticize the police force that said she was a runaway and didn't connect her for 2 weeks. But we're moving on.
We've had that rant several times in this series alone. I can't start it
do
again. I'm not strong enough.
No, I think you should start it again. Get your message across. What's that,
is
guys?
at least the
If
second
you want
one.
to hear that rant, you can go to part 1, 2, or 3, and you will hear it again.
This is also possibly the second
like
time
how you
of me
treat it kind of like
promising
an
not to do
infomercial.
that rant.
And
There's
then,
more episodes, so it may still happen.
so,
To be fair, I'm also enabling, so
okay.
ooga booga, guys. I think you should do it again as a treat later.
We'll see.
And we're not laughing because we think that this is funny.
For
I'm
morale.
laughing because Kelsey won't stop ranting.
I'm
And that's
laughing
on
because if I could, I would punch each one of these people in the face. I'd line them up.
Boom, boom, boom.
One for you. One for you.
Okay.
Oh my
Okay,
god,
we're coming back
Oprah.
down. We're
You
coming
get a
back down.
punch. You get a punch. Everybody gets a punch.
We're coming back down. Everyone, stop laughing, stop giggling. We are back down to seriousness. Laura Smither, 12, was the 25th victim found. She had been an aspiring ballerina.
No. There's something just so, like, every little girl wants to be a ballerina, and there's just something so sweet about that.
She lived with her father and her stepmother Gay. Her stepmother's name is Gay. A little
Oh, I thought you were just like,
backstory.
"That's so gay to live with your stepmom and
No, I'm
dad."
like, it's literally her name is Gay. A
The
little
way you just, like,
backstory.
quickly with, like, "Gay."
I was like, I don't know how to
Sorry.
say this without it sounding weird. A little backstory for their family. After Laura's mother had died when she was very young, her father was very distraught and was struggling to take care of his daughter. And so he ended up hiring a nanny. The nanny was gay, and they had kind of formed their little family. They got along really well. And then later, she became his wife. And she says that she believes God put her on this earth to be Laura's mom.
Oh.
Like she had, from the start, such a strong connection to her. And she really did raise her. I mean, she was her stepmother from the time that she was very young. And I will say, Laura's father and stepmother are still together. Like this is like a long lasting relationship
Aw.
after all of this has happened.
How much time we're spending on this relationship is making me very worried for where this case is going.
Oh, not related to them
Uh-oh.
in particular.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted, this is like a very
Oh.
sweet family. And if you watch the Netflix documentary,
No.
Gay is in it talking about like the relationship with the family and the daughter. She talks more than the dad, actually. She
I
really
think it's a
loves
great
this kid,
example
man.
of, being a parent is not a matter of have birthing a child, I think.
No. The morning that Laura went missing was April 3rd, 1997. And she was jogging down the street in her neighborhood in Friendswood near I-45.
She's probably training because she was wanted to be a ballerina. She was doing her endurance training.
And she's in Friendswood.
Uh,
She was only supposed to be gone for like 20 minutes.
yeah.
Unlike the other cases, the police actually jumped into action.
Hmm.
One police officer remembers that his work on the narcotics task force was literally put on hold for this case. 6,000 volunteers were gathered to find Laura, including some U.S. Marines. But she had
Here's
gone
the
missing
thing.
without a trace.
Here's the thing. That's wonderful and that's great and that's what should have happened for all of these cases. And the thing about it though is that that makes me beg the question, why didn't this happen for all these other cases? Cuz
So
clearly
they
you had the ability. Hey, I'm having the rant. It's happening. I promised I wouldn't do it 4 minutes
okay,
ago.
okay,
It's
but here's the
happening
thing.
anyway.
They discuss this. They discuss this in the Netflix documentary, and I think this is an interesting point where they're like, Laura was just young enough that they're like, oh, she's a baby child. She couldn't
That
have run
was going to be my
away.
next
She's
point.
not a teenager. She wasn't anywhere weird. She was in her neighborhood going for a little jog. Don't know why I
That was
went
gonna be
that
my
time.
next point, is she was on the right cusp of the 12 to 13, because if she'd been a year older, would the response have been the same? I also wonder if there's a class difference here.
Probably not.
She's like a young girl from the
Mm.
suburbs. I don't know if there's a class thing here, but it makes me wonder.
Yeah.
And it makes me so mad because it's like, oh, you do know how to do this. You do know how to handle a missing persons investigation. So you chose not to for all these other ones. Okay, that's fine.
It's because of the teen and 13, and then everyone else, they were like, you're old enough, you should know better. Or like, they're old enough to make their own decisions. They probably ran away, and it's like, scratch his head. Come on, buddy.
Laura's body would be found on April 20th. So she went missing on April 3rd, found on April 20th. She was 12 miles away in Pasadena. A father and son who were out for a walk, they weren't even searching. Like these search parties didn't take up anything, but just like father and son were just like out for a walk with their dogs and found her in a retention pond.
I mean, they probably thought Pasadena was too far.
Yeah. The cause of death was
Hmm.
unclear due to the 17 days in water. She was naked, save for one sock and a silver ring.
Oh.
The Laura Recovery Center was later founded by her parents with the goal of aiding searches and recovery of kidnapped victims. Which it's incredible that we have like Tim Miller from Part 3, whose daughter Laura Miller went missing, and he starts his like this Equa search, and he is involved with a couple of these cases. Actually, I think I can't remember if he was in the Laura Smithers case searching, but eventually later, like he did become friends with that family. Like
Oh.
they go on to
Oh.
establish these centers, these groups for trying to aid other people who this has happened to, and it's gut-wrenching that that happened to them, but they do so much positive things with that experience.
I think it's also clear with these
Mm-hmm.
cases that there's a need,
Yes.
because Laura Smithers is an exception to the rule that we've been seeing, is that the police usually are not looking or don't care to look. And when they do care to look, there's not that many of them at the end of the day in a police force. There's volunteers and that's great, but like most volunteers don't really know like what we're looking for. And then it comes to body recovery, like where should you be looking? What should you be looking for? Like there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Laura's case would later end up being connected to 3 others due to a man named William Reece, who worked at a construction site down the road from when Laura lived. I won't discuss too many details about him just yet, kind of in order to preserve our timeline. I do want to discuss the 26th victim found in the Texas killing fields, Sarah Trusty, so we'll kind of put a pin in that and come back. Sarah Trusty went missing in July 2002. We're in the 2000s.
It's a
Oh
really
man.
consistent stream of people going missing every few years in this area.
She was 22 and had been biking past Algoa Baptist Church in Galveston County at 11 p.m. Her bike would be found inside the church the next day.
Interesting.
Her body was found 2 weeks later on July 28th by some fishermen in a dike near the Texas City floodgate. She was still wearing her clothes from the night she went missing. I do not have anything about how she died and kind of any other information except for what I got from r/unsolved murders on Reddit. So again, grain of salt. They stated that, quote, law enforcement indicate there was no gunshot or stabbing wounds on the body, end quote.
So likely
Hmm.
drowning 'cause she was found in a dike, or strangulation, or I mean, I guess bludgeoning could be.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, not really.
Again, she spent 2 weeks in water.
Yeah, that could make it if it's especially something like more flesh oriented cause of death, like strangulation, that could make it really difficult to determine later on.
This is all I have for Sarah, and her case is unsolved.
Oh, okay.
What?
What what was going on with the bike in the church, guys? No one looked into that? No one asked anybody? That's interesting. That's weird.
That's kind of. Oh
And
my
her body,
god.
how far away from the church was her body found?
Um, oh, you know what? I actually don't know the exact distance,
Hmm.
but it's in the same like county area.
Okay. That's really
We've talked about
interesting to
Galveston
learn.
County a couple of times in relation to
Yeah.
this, so it's like the area.
But that makes me wonder, like, did the person
Okay.
she was last seen around the church, did the person whoever did this abduct her, take her to wherever this dike was, and then realize they still had her bike? Or was like, oh, I should move the bike, and like move the bike to the church to obscure, to like cast doubt as to who could have done this? Or was it somebody involved in the church that maybe lured her into the church?
It's just such an odd detail.
It's an odd detail.
Moving on. Teresa I looked this up and I'm trying to remember what it was because it's like Vanigas, but it's not. It's like Vanigas, Venegas. Sounds right.
Venegas?
Oh,
Venegas
Venegas.
sounds right.
Venegas.
Teresa Venegas. I literally put phonetically how I was supposed to pronounce it because I was like, when I read it, my American brain is going to say Fanny Gus, which is not it.
Nope.
Mm.
Venegas was the 27th victim found. Teresa had been 16 when she went missing after leaving a party at the Green Cay subdivision in Dickinson, Texas on Halloween 2006. It had actually been around her birthday at that time as well.
That
She
makes
would
it
be
so much
found
worse somehow.
she would be found 3 days later in a part of the fields that was across from Dickinson High School. Teresa's hair had been cut off, she had been raped, and then strangled to death.
Hmm.
Okay. The hair thing is a very, I don't want to say it's very serial killery because I don't want to like make that a weird adjective that we use, but it's a very specific,
It speaks to a
likely like
trophy.
it speaks to a trophy, it speaks to humiliating her,
Yeah.
it speaks to like stripping her of like femininity.
Yeah. It's a weird
That's
it's
so
such a weird
yucky.
It's
detail
gross.
that it's gross, and it makes me think of someone who had some kind of, like, anger at, like, women or
Mhm.
hatred of, like, her in particular for some reason. Um,
Definitely, definitely.
it's odd. Her case is still unsolved. As of 2018, the police have interviewed 45 people in relation to this case, but there hasn't been enough information to actually name any suspect. Her family is still fighting for there to be more effort to be put into her case. Sadly, like many of the other families, they fight really hard for there to be more searching, but these cases end up going cold and lose attention.
I understand the
Oh my
frustration, but also
god.
at the end of the day, if the information just isn't there, no amount of police like well, I guess a certain amount of police interviewing will do stuff, but sometimes there comes a point in a case where you just kind of have to wait for a break. Although the like strangling is a
Hmm.
deeply like that takes a while. Like, I think people see that in movies and they think, "Oh, like 30 seconds and they're done." That takes minutes of sitting there with a ligature or your hands around someone's throat to do that.
Yeah.
It's
And you
interesting that
think
that
about
didn't leave
actually
any.
sitting for 4 minutes. Like,
Yeah,
we're not just, like, not distracted, not saying anything, literally just for 4 minutes.
it's
That
a
is a
long
long
time.
time.
And for no DNA to end up on the body as a result of that is not impossible, but it's you expect more DNA to be there. So, like, did they wear gloves? What level of forethought was in that, you know?
Mhm. On to the next case. Jessica Kane went missing in 1997. She was 17 at the time. She had been part of a theater group and she had a lot of friends.
A theater kid.
She was a theater kid. Um,
She was a
on August 17th, Jessica left a restaurant near the Clear Lake area to drive back home to Tiki Island, Texas, a very small community. Her truck would be found abandoned on I-45
Hmm.
with her belongings, like personal belongings, like her wallet inside. For weeks, volunteers, including Tim Miller and
Tim!
Laura Smithers' parents,
Oh,
searched the area and she was
oh,
not found.
did they find anything wrong with the truck? Like, why would a young woman get out of her truck willingly on a highway on an interstate at night if there wasn't something wrong, either like something somebody had set up or something wrong with her car, you know,
It is
to make
very
her get
odd.
out.
The only other thing besides car problems could be like if she was feeling nauseous or something. Like I could see someone pulling over
True.
for that. But again, very odd situations.
Mm-hmm.
So her friends said that she would never leave without calling someone. So it was like really weird that like she like deviated from this path. She was like, it was an odd scenario.
Mhm.
In February 2016,
Oh my God.
William Reece, the man who worked down the street from Laura Smithers, led investigators to a part of the field on East Orham Drive and told them that he buried Jessica somewhere in that area.
But he buried her. And that's interesting considering we've already connected him to Laura's case and he just kind of abandoned her body in a little culvert
And we're going to
of
get to
water.
like the sequential of this as well. Like we'll come back to this.
Okay.
But in March, Jessica's remains were dug up. And on May 20th, Harris County medical examiner positively ID'd her, specifically her bones, using the DNA testing they had available. On September 1st, 2016, William Reece was indicted for Jessica's murder, and we'll come back to this. I have one last victim of the killing fields, the 29th victim, to talk about, and then we're going to get into William Reece and the order of events and kind of what was going on with him a little bit. So our last and 29th victim was Kelly Ann Cox.
That's my middle name. And also, Kelly is my sister's middle name, so that's freaking.
Oh.
I didn't know her middle name was Kelly. I guess I didn't know your sister's middle name. Anyway, I knew your middle name.
No one
That's
knows my
fair.
sister's
Yeah.
middle name.
Honestly, I'd be like, lore?
Anyway,
Secret lore.
Aaron Kelly. Lore. That's an interesting combo. Anyway, we're moving on. Kelly Ann Cox was 20 years old when she went missing. She was studying at the University of North Texas and took care of her daughter Alexis, who was 19 months at the time.
Oh, I went aw as in a little baby, and then it changed in pitch as I realized I remembered what we were talking about and got really sad.
Again, this is rough, guys. On July 5th, 1997, she had dropped off Alexis and went to Denton County Jail. Her criminology class was doing a field trip, and she had been instructed not to bring personal items like phones or keys into the jail by her professor. So she left a spare key in a magnetic box on the wheel well of her car because of this. However, when she got back to her car, she wasn't able to unlock it and like the key wasn't working. Her boyfriend said this is really bizarre because literally the night before they had like tested this whole situation out to make sure that like it would work for her. So it not working, Kelly like walked across the street to Rick's drive-in to get change that she could use the payphone outside to call her boyfriend. She ended up calling him, and when he came 35 minutes later to where Kelly's car was, she was not there. Police questioned those around Kelly and obviously heavily questioned the boyfriend. He ended up passing 4 polygraph tests and was eliminated as a suspect, not just because of the polygraph tests, but,
Yep.
It was part of it. There was...
You gotta look at the boyfriend. You kind of have to, but also with the timeline, it doesn't really make sense for him to have
It's weird.
Been able to.
Yeah.
There was really nothing for the police to follow.
Hang on, wait. She's outside the jail.
Yeah.
There are no cameras outside of the jail?
She went across the street to Rick's drive-in.
Still, there's no cameras in the jail parking lot that don't even see her leave to the drive-in.
I know.
That don't see her come back.
There's not even like
anyone
out there.
And what year was this?
This was 1997. I'm sorry, I yawned. 1997.
No cameras outside of a jail where You would hope not, but there might be an incident in which you might want to see who is outside of the jail.
Also, like, I know, like, a drive-in near a jail, you wouldn't want to have a security camera?
Right? What?
Mhm.
Also,
Anyway,
what's going on with the key? How do you I assume it's a normal key. It could have been a key fob. How how do you mess with that?
so there wasn't anything for the police to follow until William Reece gave a tip. Kelly's body was found on March 18th, 2016 in the Brazoria County area. I don't really have any details for the state that her body was in or like when they like found her, what was the cause of death. Um,
They may have been unable to determine it depending on the state of
very,
it.
very likely because she would have been bones at this point. It also could possibly be that in the way that this is going, it just got prosecuted really quickly.
Yeah. I can
So
understand like wanting to put something based on what we're going to talk about. I think putting something like this to bed as quick as you can.
let's finally transition to who William Reece was.
A little piece of garbage that sticks on the bottom of your shoe. Like, you know, when you step in dog poo and then it's just on your
Yeah,
shoe for a little while? That's
yeah.
what he is.
And it's hard to get out.
Yeah, it's like really in there.
William was born on July 1st, 1959, to a family of 13 siblings in Oklahoma.
Damn.
For many years, he worked as a farm laborer after quitting school after ninth grade due to family financial issues.
And I mean, that wasn't super uncommon for I assume this is a farm family. That not
At
uncommon,
the
not
very
unheard
least, a
of.
farm town.
A
So
farm, yeah.
when we say country, it's country. He would go on to enlist in the Oklahoma National Guard for a period of time. He would be married and divorced twice to the same woman, with whom he had two children.
Can we say toxic relationship?
During their marriage, William would drink heavily
Which
and
one?
physically
Both?
abuse his wife.
Oh, now I feel bad for joking.
Hmm.
Oh, why'd you marry him again, girl? I was gonna say, until you said that, I was gonna say, this seems like a pretty normal life.
His wife even ended up calling, I believe this is what finally ended their relationship dead in the water. His wife ended up calling the police in 1982 after one incident where William threatened to kill her with a knife and a shotgun.
That's specific. Yeah,
Overkill
that
much?
speaks to a very angry person. But also, I think it's important to say this is Oklahoma. This is the West, the South, Southwest edge of it. It's the 80s. The attitude of domestic violence is very different than it is today. There's a lot more like keep it in the home energy. So the fact that she felt that she needed to call the police, I think speaks to how much she was afraid for her life, that she was willing, like, we're getting rid of the what will the neighbors think, we'll get rid of the, to keep this within the home, all of those attitudes of the time. She was like, no, 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 I am going to die if I don't get somebody on the phone here. That really, and they had two
Mhm.
kids too, so there's kids in
Yeah.
the situation.
Um, William would
Messy.
be married and divorced to another woman as well. I don't really have details on that. But again, we're just giving the background that William is a violent person and an abuser.
I think it's safe to say the patterns were continued in the next marriage.
In April 1986, a 19-year-old daughter of a sheriff's deputy had her car stall on the side of the road. William, a truck driver at the time, told her he would bring her to the payphone to help get her to call help. He was just going to help her out.
What a nice thing to do. I'm sure he just did that and
Oh
nothing else
yeah,
happened, right?
of course. William, just brought her to a hotel, just a motel,
Hmm.
and then brought her in and tied her up and then raped her.
I mean, I knew this was
Yuck!
going, but it was still so
Yuck!
shocking.
Yuck!
Thankfully,
Ew.
because she's a badass,
I was gonna say, she beat
she
his ass.
she escaped
Yeah.
because she was like, "I need
Okay,
to use
so
the bathroom," like, and he left her in the bathroom, and she used that opportunity and she got out of there. Good for her.
Good. And I
let's
think also with
go.
her parent
Mhm.
being a sheriff's deputy, I think she knew, like, if I don't get out of here, there's no way this person's leaving me alive. Like, she knew she had to get out of there.
Mhm.
Yeah. Obviously, William was arrested because she escaped,
Yeah.
saw his face, and had details. But
Get fucked. Get
he
fucked.
made bail.
Who
And while he
bailed
was
him out?
released, I don't know.
His wife, maybe?
I don't know.
Mm.
But while he was released, he used the opportunity to rape another woman who was
Shocker.
arrested.
Come on.
He was sentenced to 25 years for 2 rapes. But his attorneys appealed the conviction due to a procedural error, leading to a reduced sentence and him going on parole in October 1996.
How come procedural errors never result in a longer or
What?
the same sentence? You know, how does a procedural error change what you did? That's my question. Sure, retrial, everything should
Yeah.
be above board, but also none of the facts changed. How does this happen?
So there's a lot that happens in the single year that he is free. So I'm going to go in chronological order. On April 3rd, 1997, as we know, Laura Smitherd was kidnapped and killed. In May 1997, Sandra Sapo, a case that we have not discussed because she was not found in the killing fields, she was 19. When after stopping at a gas station in Webster, Texas to use a payphone, she was found only minutes later leaving with a flat tire. And she's like, oh, shoot. She pulls off. Well, William came to the rescue, offering to help her out.
Stay away from that girl.
And
Stay
then
away from
lured
her.
her into his truck where he held her at knife point and bound her wrists.
The same knife he almost definitely used to slash her tire so that it would be flat.
But guess what?
Oh
Sandra's a
my
badass.
god.
Yes, kick his ass, Sandra.
Oh,
She
yippee.
broke free and jumped out of the car. Like the moving truck, she jumped out.
Get it, Sandra.
She survived. She was obviously very hurt from this stunt, but she survived and was brought to the hospital where the police were called. We'll come back to her case. But in order to preserve the timeline, I'm going back to the others. So there's time in between when he gets caught for this.
Of course.
Because she is very injured and he had time to escape. So,
But also, he got out of, like, he left jail. Nobody thought to keep an eye on this dude.
and we're also going to discuss this a little bit. It seemed like he was going between Texas and Oklahoma a lot. So, kind of skewing where he is, and there's a lot of fog that comes with that. But so that was May. So we have April, May, July.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's clearly very short of a cooldown period for this dude.
On July 15th, Kelly Ann Cox was kidnapped and killed. So, payphone outside of the jail. On July 29th, so July 15th, July 29th, or sorry, 6th. So, 11 days later, Tiffany Johnston, another case that we haven't discussed because she was not part of the fields, she was kidnapped by William. To give a brief overview of her case, she was 19 when she went missing. Her car was found in Bethany, Oklahoma at Sunshine Car Wash, a place that William frequented. Tiffany's body would be found by I-40 near a dirt road. She had been raped, beaten, and strangled. William was not convicted of this until 2015 when his DNA was matched to what was found on Tiffany.
He's clearly the fact that he is finding these women clearly out of opportunity, and girls because Laura is a child, clearly out of opportunity, does not even seem to give any sort of thought into, oh, if I kidnap the girl who lives near the construction site that I'm working at, it might get tied back to me. Oh, if I kidnap a woman at the car wash that I frequent, they might tie it back to me. Clearly not a thought. And clearly he didn't have to give it a thought because he
Yeah.
didn't get caught.
And he's like using his truck. So he's like a truck driver.
Definitely.
So he's like going from like Oklahoma to Texas. He's at gas stations for a lot of these, payphones for a lot of these, like places that you would just stop along the highway, and is
Mhm.
using the opportunity.
He's just using his routes,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah.
Not even really hunting. He's just like, well, there's one.
Back to our
Gross.
timeline. On August 17th, Jessica Kane was kidnapped, killed. So if you've been counting, in the span of 5 months, this man killed 4 women and attempted to kidnap and presumably kill a fifth.
You have to wonder if there was more before that he hasn't admitted to, or we haven't found, because that's such a one after the other after the other. Like, it's a very sudden, like,
Yeah,
guess I'll just do this every few weeks.
this is a little.
He did, yeah, it's like he came out of jail. There was like a grace period, and then like
I want to know who I want to know who put him on bail. I
I
want to know who let him out. I
I
just
am
want to talk.
curious if it's kind of like he got out of jail. It took a couple months, and then he got a job. Like he's got a truck he's driving. I assuming he's doing truck driving business again. I'm not positive, but it sounds like that. And I'm wondering if he got his job, and then once he had his job, he's like, now the opportunity.
Maybe.
It's horrific. It is awful. There's no way to downplay that. So this is where we kind of come back to Sandra, or Sandra, I don't know what she goes by, but I've been saying Sandra, who gave a description of William to the police, and after being put under hypnosis, was able to remember William's license plate number.
Damn, girl. Get it,
She's a
Sandra.
badass.
Damn, she got that locked
I feel that
away.
living victims of serial killers should be allowed one free punch.
For sure. I
Like
mean, unless you don't want to touch them, they're gross. I mean,
that's true. You can get a glove. Like the cops just like
Rude.
hold either arm of
you
the
should
guy
get
and
like
just
the
get a
most muscular
haymaker.
cop and be like, I want him to do it for me.
I want to do him to do it for you. You can like
I want it to be more painful.
you get one punch, but you're allowed to say if
Can
you
I
do
ask
it
for an
or
aid and you have
you
like
can
a
like
Your
appoint a
dad?
second.
You get your
I want
dad.
my dad to punch him.
I want
Oh
my dad to
God.
punch this man, please.
It's kind of like a duel that you're
Dad,
allowed a
get him!
second, so you
Get
can
him!
choose to like bequeath your one punch to somebody else.
This is absolutely not something to laugh about, but it's so.
She deserves it. She deserves one
deserves
good
it.
haymaker. And you know who else deserves it? Fucking William Reece. He deserves to get a punch to the face.
Yeah, what's he gonna do? Come here and be like, guys, stop it. You're being so mean to me. Fuck off. Woman hater. Boo.
So
Be nice.
So they got his license plate number. And from there, she was able to point him out in a photo array, which then led to him being arrested and charged for the kidnapping in 1998. So he got 60 years for the crime, but the police were still suspicious about what else he might have done.
As they should.
So during
Yeah.
the early 2000s, William had to submit his DNA to CODIS.
Huh. But now I'm interested because the other ones we talked about happened, like he admitted to them in 2016.
In 2015, his DNA was matched to Tiffany Johnston, and he was charged on September 21st in 2015 for her murder. And then by 2016, William started confessing to the murders of Laura Smither, Kelly Cox, and Jessica Kane. So it sounded like he had like gotten these things, and he's like, well, fuck it, I'm not getting out of here.
No. I hate that we have to rely on the serial killers for closure for these cases, but I don't want to say I appreciate it, but I do like it when they're like, all right, the jig's up,
Yeah.
I will tell you. Because sometimes as we've seen, there are people who refuse to give up the ghost even when it's like they're even charged for the murder and
Because they just want
convicted
to
of it.
prolong suffering.
Yeah, exactly. So at least he had some semblance of an inkling of humanity to tell the people where the families where these bodies were. That's just the tiniest shred of humanity that exists in his disgusting little body.
So let's talk about his side.
Oh, do we have to?
For Laura Smither, the 12-year-old from Friendswood, he initially said he had hit her with his car by accident on a rainy
No.
day and then went to hide her body in the lake. He was like, in his initial confession was, oh, I fucked up. Like I hit her and I was like, I don't want to be in trouble. So
Where does her
That
rape fit into that scenario, my guy?
later on, later on, he would admit to strangling her to death. But he claims this was not sexually motivated. And yeah,
Did we ever get any
I
like
want that
she
food.
went jogging? Was it raining that day?
I'm not sure. I couldn't confirm that. Also, there wasn't any description that she was raped.
Oh, I'm sorry. I might have confused somebody else.
But it's also like it had been a long time in the water. So it's not like it could be like they just didn't have the evidence and he's like, they didn't know. So I'm like, I'm not going to say.
I will say whether or not we could prove
Mm.
that she was raped, there is no way that strangulation was not sexually motivated.
Yeah,
I do
knowing
not
him,
believe you, William.
yuck.
For
I don't
Kellyanne
trust.
Cox, he claimed that he had stopped at a gas station in Denton to buy some whiskey when he got into a physical confrontation with Kelly, during which he then strangled her to death. And he later buried her in the woods in Brazoria and once again claimed that his crime was not sexually motivated.
I feel that's weird to like bring up every time. I did strangle her, but just to let you guys know, because I'm totally not weird. It was
Because
not
he's
sexually
like, it's not like I
motivated.
have a history of
Mhm.
rape, looks back.
Looks
Oh,
at the
the cops
history
looking at
of
his
rape.
file. That's really sorry. Hold on. That's really interesting. You say that. Anyways, you're a lying bitch. No, I'm sorry.
I like
Anyways,
how a prop had to be coming.
yuck. It was
Dramatic effect.
for effect, and I'm glad it worked.
So,
Bitch.
finally, for Jessica Kane, he claims that she had rejected him outside of the restaurant that night, and in anger, he followed her car until she had to stop. So he was like severely tailgating her and, like, essentially ran her off the road. Once she stopped to confront him, he beat her, then strangled her to death.
I think that may be his most honest confession yet.
Probably, yeah.
The Oklahoma trials for these three cases took a long time because it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. There was asbestos in the courthouse, which means that they like couldn't start the trial. So instead of it being in 2017, it was in 2019. I just think it's really dumb that asbestos.
But also, we couldn't find like a multi-purpose room somewhere to hold court.
I think we just put him in there and have him inhale the
Yeah,
toxic
I'm
dust.
not
Like
super concerned
solitary
about
confinement.
him
So yeah, so it was like
getting
Get white
cancer.
lung.
set to
Come
begin in
on.
2019.
Get poisoned, idiot.
And then some things happened, and then COVID-19 happened. So the trial
Oh,
was pushed to
damn.
May 2021.
Is he
This
still
kind of
alive?
brings to mind the your right to a speedy
It does,
trial.
it does. And like right for speedy trial for the person
Well, not speedy,
accused,
but
but
like a
also right for speedy
reasonable
trial
time.
for the victims and their families.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I mean, at that point, it wasn't going to be speedy in any sense of the words because it had been 20 years when they initially said it, and then now it's 2021. Anyway, on the 28th of May, William was found guilty, but his defense team claimed that a plea agreement had been broken. So on
What are
August
you talking
19th,
about?
Oh joy.
2021, he was finally sentenced to death in Oklahoma County District Court. And in March, and then, because we're not done, because it's not just Oklahoma, it is also Texas. In March
Oh
in
right.
March 2022, he was extradited to Texas, where he pleaded guilty to all three crimes, all three murders, and then in June 2022 was sentenced to life imprisonment. He was then sent back to Oklahoma, or he will be sent back there soon because I think it's still transitionary. Anyway, he's getting sent back, so he'll be imprisoned on death row in Oklahoma.
Wait a minute. They said a plea in Oklahoma court, a plea deal had been reached. Was the plea agreement death?
Well,
What
the
was
defense
the
team
not plea
claimed that
agreement?
there was a plea
Yeah,
agreement,
I
but it sounds
wanna
like maybe that didn't happen, and then it just
scratch his head.
they argued.
Maybe he like didn't agree to it? Because like sometimes the court will
Yeah,
offer a plea agreement, but
yeah.
you have to take it.
Anyway,
Chief, I would lose that argument so fast. I would be like, "Oh no, send him to jail. I'm just stealing
it's
his money.
just
Send that bitch to
such a
jail."
crazy trial. Asbestos, COVID,
This is
plea agreement.
asbestos.
He has to get extradited.
This is also
I'll
one of
put him
those
down
cases where
myself.
it makes me I feel like I can't really have an opinion one way or the other about the death penalty because on the one hand, it I don't know, I have a lot of feelings about it like in a
Yeah,
moralistic standpoint, but also what, we're just gonna keep people in jail for their whole lives? That's better somehow, and also they're a drain on, like, taxes and the government. I don't wanna say we should kill people just because they're a drain, but then there are people like William Reece who are like, "You can't release this person
right.
back into the world. They do not feel bad for what they've done. They've learned nothing. They will never be better, and if you let them out, they'll do this again." And I don't know that the answer is to kill them, but I don't know that it's not the answer, you know? So I can understand why that's what Oklahoma
It's like a
sentenced him to.
weird gray area
That's
for a
fair,
lot of
yeah.
things. And sometimes it's like it seems like the person wants to be on death row, and you're like, well, I don't want what you want because I really feel like
Yeah,
sometimes it's like, hey,
not for
families of the
you.
victims, what do you think?
Yeah, I wonder, did the family say they were pushing for the death
I think
penalty for this?
probably some of them were. I think it's one. Before I trip over my words, I think again it's one of those things where a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about what should happen, about whether they should rot in prison or if they should be killed for what they've done. But
That's the other thing too with this many victims is not everyone's going to have the same opinion about what they want. You can't make everyone happy. I agree with you though, like and I do believe that's somewhat represented in court with victim impact statements that have to be heard by the judge when they determine like
yeah,
sentencing and things like that. So there is some of that in there.
this finally concludes our series on the Texas killing fields. A total of 29 murders committed in a 35-year span between 1971 to 2006, where victims were buried or dumped in the same 25-acre field. Unfortunately,
Join us next week when we have part
yeah,
5.
yeah. Unfortunately,
Part
a
five.
majority of these cases are unsolved, and having little investigation done for many of them, I think a lot of these killers are going to get away with it. Thank you guys for sticking around for all of this series as you have been for all 4 parts.
We appreciate you. And you know what? There could be, forensic genetic genealogy is really uptaking in the last
Right?
few years. That's going to come up. Stay tuned. That's going to come up in one of my cases shortly. So there is a chance that at least most of these are identified, but we've seen that with the Golden State Killer.
Yeah,
It can lead to killers as well. So there's
we could
still a
see.
chance, I think. And there's also, you never know, could be a deathbed
We can
confession.
hold out hope.
I doubt it in a lot of these cases. It sounds like a lot of these were perpetrated by serial killers or people with a similar affectation of complete lack of regard. I do not think any of these people who committed these murders feel any sort of guilt whatsoever for what they have done, and I doubt that will change on their deathbed.
That ends it. And again, I've imagined our table in the fields this entire time. Well, partially, we were in Tim Miller's office last time. Shout out to the parents of this who, one, horrific things happen. I'm so sorry. But also, so many of you like bound together and found a community and helped each other. And it's really beautiful to see something positive to come out of something so horrific. But that's where we're going to end it. Thanks, everybody. Push in your chairs. We are finally leaving these fields and we'll be at another location that probably still isn't good, but a different location nonetheless. Bye, everybody.
Different
Bye.
location. But we should probably check in every few years because I don't. What's going on with this field?
It's not the field's
ya.
fault. It's everybody else's fault. The field is just like, I'm here. I just got a lot of space. And some people, like, what's his face? I don't give a shit about him. I'm not respecting his name right now. Is like, free real estate?
Be
Boink.
safe out there, guys. That's what I'm
true.
saying.
So,
Be
leave the
safe.
field alone.
Don't go to payphones. Well, payphones don't really exist that much anymore. But don't go to them.
Yeah.
There's still a
Don't
couple
go to them. Be
payphones in
careful
this
when
world.
you're out running.
There is.
Be
but
careful. It's none of these people's fault. But be careful. You could do everything right and it could still happen. And I am terrified of the world we live in.
Travel in groups.
I didn't say it, and I know we're at the end of the episode, but like I did have that thought at some point of like maybe around victim number 20 of like,
Yeah.
what are these people supposed to do? Not live their life? Because some of these women did literally everything right. They were just existing, and then somebody decided that was they took that personal, I guess, and decided that they were going to do something horrendous about it.
You're a woman?
To someone who's just doing their own thing and minding their own business, and just by virtue of the fact that they were a woman, they were a person of color, they were a child existing out in the world, they decided that they had to take that away from them. And there's a hopeless element to this. And to Annalise's point, I am very glad that a lot of the families like chose to find something productive about it, because it's the kind of thing that can really just ruin you for humanity, I think. That's my final thought. Bye-bye.
Bye.